Hello, oh, excuse me, Ian again. As you see, it's 15th of December 2019, Sunday morning, and I'm sitting here on the top of our terrace, if you like, on the roof, just outside the volunteer accommodation, which is behind the camera, so you can't see it. And it's a rather grey sky day, I might say very Britishy sort of weather, where the grey sky is going right over from horizon to horizon, and but it's warming up now, so it might warm up during the latter part of the day. It's just after midday, and I wanted to talk not about Chingari. I've been at Chingari all this week and doing lots of treatments, and but there was something happened on Friday which made me think a little bit about differences between cultures, because we were going to go out on, no, not Friday, yesterday, Saturday. On Friday I was told that there was a picnic the next day, on Saturday, and would I come along? Of course. So yes, Saturday morning I walked over to Chingari at 10 o'clock, got there at 10 o'clock, and first person I saw was Rishi, who told me that the picnic had been called off. I thought initially that it might be because of the weather, because it had been very damp, a little bit of drizzle the previous day, and it was not the ideal weather to go on a picnic. And we were going out, I think it's about 50 kilometres to the main dam, which is a sort of natural parkland area. Would be quite fun for the children to play in. But no, that wasn't the reason. The reason that we'd cancelled the event was because one of the drivers, his father, had died. And that led me to thinking, if this was in Europe, in my country, the UK, would we have cancelled the school event because the father of one of the drivers of the buses that was going to take us had died? And I sort of doubt it. There's an interesting perspective, I think, here on the death and dying process. And I don't know why this person died. Maybe he was just an older man and he just died perfectly naturally. There could have been many, many reasons, of which I don't know. But here and in countries like Africa also, I came across this. Death and dying is a natural part of life. And it passes, it comes, it passes, everybody accepts it and knows it and appreciates that that's going to happen to everybody at some time. But when it happens, there's, I suppose in a sense, it's a bit of a respect for this driver, this man, and his father and his family. So it seemed to be quite a natural thing that it's what you would do. You wouldn't try and find another driver, or as would undoubtedly happen in the UK and in Europe, the bus company would supply you with another driver, and you probably wouldn't even know that the driver who was going to come and do your driving for you had a family loss. So it just made me think about those attitudes, and it also brought me back to the time a couple of years ago where one of the young men in the clinic who worked in Sambhavna clinic, the one I usually go to, I was working there at the time, and he had mostly worn a crash helmet when he was riding on his motorbike. If you go to places like Delhi, you'll see everybody wearing their crash helmet. It is a legal requirement in India, but in somewhere like Bhopal, it's quite rare actually, and it's really noticeable the difference between the 2 days I was in Delhi and the time I've been here. And this young man mostly wore his hat, but on this one occasion he was only going for a short distance to take a friend home, something like that, and they just nipped out, said, "I'll just take you home," hadn't bothered to put on his helmet, hit by a vehicle and killed. And the clinic decided that they would close the next day. And again, I can't imagine that happening in the UK. This young man had died. He left a wife and I think 1 or 2 children. I'm not sure how many. And that was one of the ways that the clinic decided to respect him. And then several of them went to his funeral, which was, I think, the day or the day after, the day after or the day after the day after. See what I mean? And it led to something happening also, that they had a meeting and they decided that if anybody arrived, any of the staff members arrived and came to work without wearing a crash helmet on their motorbikes, they would be fined. Only a small fine, I think maybe 50 rupees or something like that, which is little more than 50 pence at the current exchange rates, and that has been enforced, and you see all the people coming into Sambhavna now, all the staff people. I'm not talking about the patients, but the staff people. They all come in wearing their crash helmets now. So that's changed a lot of the attitude and activity. So it made me think about those differences and how we approach those, and particularly how we approach death and the death of somebody who's just a work colleague, and not even that in the case of the Chingari and the bus driver. So I leave you with those little thoughts. There was one other lovely thing I will just mention in Chingari. A little girl, Rabia, came with a young woman who was clearly not her mother and turned out to be her sister. And she was telling me that Rabia's mother had died after giving birth to the little girl. Her husband, i.e. Rabia's father, had 3 more daughters, older daughters, and this was the 4th, and he really would have struggled to look after the new little baby and little girl. And so the young woman who was telling me this, Sadia, who described the little girl as her sister, was actually her cousin. And Sabia's mother, who was the sister of the woman who had died, had agreed that she would take care of the baby and has now formally adopted it. So Sadia quite rightly calls her sister and clearly cares an awful lot to her. That's the sort of very positive family interactions that can happen out here. Not always positive, of course, but that was a very good example of how a sister, when her sister dies, is taken care and adopted, and the sister clearly loves this little girl very much. She's quite young, got cerebral palsy, and is doing okay and cared for by her sister and the family around her. So I'll leave you with just those thoughts. Next week I'll maybe tell you a little bit more about what I'm actually doing here. But those were the things on my mind this week, so I just wanted to put them out there. Thanks a lot for listening. Speak to you sometime soon.